Hi, and welcome to this month's Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this month is Iftikhar Mohammed from Mortgage X. And the reason why I wanted to get Iftikhar onto the podcast was to talk about Mortgage X. Yes, absolutely. Explain about what it is, what the app does, how it benefits you as mortgage brokers, how it benefits the clients. But also as well, I wanted to talk him to get across his personality, how Mortgage X has come about and how he's looking to not replace brokers, but look at how in Mortgage X can enhance the process and streamline the process and help mortgage brokers work a lot smarter. So, but who better to talk about that than Iftikhar? So let's get him onto the podcast. Iftikhar, welcome onto the podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Craig?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. I'm very excited about getting you onto the podcast and finally get you onto the podcast to talk about exciting thing of Mortgage X, which we'll get onto shortly, and everything about that and how it's working in the broker world and benefits and things like that. We will get onto that. So, but thanks for agreeing to get onto the podcast. I'm always excited to talk to people that I've never had any sort of interaction with before. I know we've sort of messaged a few times, and I know we've had a brief chat on the phone, but I like to sort of keep the podcast, like as I've said, you're very relaxed, informal, but then just my brain exploring the things you're talking about at this point. So it's very live and real rather than having preconceived agendas and things like that. It's just very much around no agenda. And thank you for trusting me with that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to know you a lot more and about your products as well. So
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think that's lovely. I think that's how it's meant to be, isn't it? Right? Then planned sort of thing. So I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So first of all, for those people that don't know who you are, do you want to just do a brief introduction about yourself?
Okay. So a lot of people will be shocked when they hear what I'm going to say now. My background is I'm a chartered accountant. That's my background. So I come from accounting background. How I got into mortgages, I'll talk about that first, right? Is that, a lot of our clients at the time, they came and said, look, can you sort of help us with mortgages, right? We said no, because we are accountants. So we used to sort of, give our clients away to other mortgage brokers, right? So one fine day, we thought, you know what, we're giving away so many of our clients to other brokers. Why don't we start one ourselves, right? So that's how, I got into the mortgage world. But this is where all these mortgage things start kicking in. Uh, Obviously, when you talk about accountancy, people talk about a lot of paperwork and envelopes coming through and things like that, right? But to be honest, when you came to the mortgage world, I mean, it was even worse, right? Because your bank statements and then the passport copies and so many suitability letters. You name it, you have it, right? And we're like, okay, this has got to change, right? So, obviously, I became a mortgage broker about 8 years ago. I've used various CRMs. I mean, there are definitely very good CRM systems out there. But I still think, if you especially take the AI world, right, it's moved on quite a lot. But our industry hasn't really, right? It hasn't embraced AI and high tech. So that's an area that was lacking, right? So that's why we thought, okay, let's start this project, right? So that's how we got into this.
It's always the case of, like, you've seen the opportunity, which does make me smile, that you've seen the opportunity of the background of being a chartered accountant. Like I say, you understand paperwork. I know what my accountant's like with paperwork. So you've sort of seen that firsthand and dealing with that day to day. But then getting into the mortgage world, not by accident, but seeing it as an opportunity. So yes, like obviously you've got there's things we're going to talk about. But initially, when you got into mortgages, you sort of fell into, is that right? Would you say you fell into the mortgage world like most of us tend to do?
Yeah, because it wasn't something I was planning to do, because all my life I've been working as an accountant, right? And that's what I've been always good at. But it's like unplanned, right? Because we thought, okay, let's help out our clients. That's how we started. But before we knew it, the business has grown on the mortgage side as well. And, but then we thought, oh, this is too much work, right? Because this can be cut down. For whatever reason, people continue to do the same thing, right? And saying, oh, this is how it is, right? But I'm thinking, no, this is not how it should be, right? This must be what you are doing, but this is certainly not what you should be doing, right? So that's why, I always fight with myself, right? Saying this is probably not the right thing. Let's start challenging what's out there, right? So, yeah.
And I think it always starts in that way, doesn't it? In terms of you sort of seeing the better way of doing something. Like for you, starting your like not taking anything away from you, then you've been quite humble about what you've achieved over the last 8 years, because you've started your own mortgage brokerage, you've got your own mortgage brokerage, your own firm that you have grown over the past 8 years and sort of built the business up. So what was you've got a mortgage broker world going on, you've got your business to run, you're still doing according to LinkedIn, which that is the only bit of stalking and prepping that I do is generally on LinkedIn. So you're still, from your LinkedIn profile, you're still running your accountancy firm, you're running your mortgage business, that's sort of going on, and then you've decided to embrace technology and become a tech innovator, as your LinkedIn profile said. So you've got quite a lot of things. Are you still doing your accountancy, if the car is that still going on? Yes. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are called WIS. So I think that kind of answers part of your question. So W stands for Vijay, who's the director. He looks after the accountancy operations. And myself, I look after
right. That's where the WIS comes from.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
That's
Gotcha. Right. Okay.
And Sunat looks after the wealth and the insurance side of the business as well. So we've kind of split up. And of course, over the years, sort of the team's kind of grown as well. So we have different people looking after operations of different parts of the business. So that has sort of helped us sort of, free up our time to do other stuff that we love to do as well, right? So I think, you need to love what you're doing as well. So for me, currently MortgageX is a challenge, right? So I love doing that, right? So, yeah.
And I can see the smile on your face. So I do genuinely believe that you are loving that challenge, which we'll talk about. So you're onto the podcast. We're going to talk about MortgageX in a bit of detail. So first, like you said, you love a challenge. You saw a better way of doing things. Was that just down to the frustrations of being a more typical mortgage broker with lots of paperwork going on and, like say, a clunky chain, shall we say, with regards to and all the parts of the chain together?
Yeah, partially. But again, we did this change in accountancy as well. I mean, we created our own system in accountancy. But again,
right.
we in our accountancy business, we have a paperless office. I mean, people won't believe it, but if you want to come and see, you can come and see now. We just don't have any paper. I mean, again, because we use software which scans stuff and things like that. So if there's any paper, we just destroy it and that's it, right? Because obviously you can't avoid HMRC sending you an envelope, right? That you can't avoid. But we only see it, we scan it, and that's out of the way. That's because we have no control over what they are doing. But otherwise, we just don't have any bank statements or anything lying around because everything is kind of automated because with our clients, everything is on system. So we've sort of done that, right? But that's why we're saying, okay, it's very frustrating in this world. Let's do something else, right? So we've done that, but obviously with the accountancy, we haven't done AI-related stuff yet, right? But with mortgage, I thought, there's so much you can do, right? So, yeah.
I think, like I said, there is a lot of things you can do. And I think the difference is with yourself is that a lot of brokers will whinge and moan about the system, it being clunky, whether that's the parts of the chain, solicitors or estate agents or underwriters or whatever part of the chain in terms of makes the whole process an extended process. So for you, like when you're sort of sat there thinking, as most mortgage brokers will, like, and I've been there, it's a case of this could be so much better. This could be a far better process. This is so much more could be done around this. Everybody has that thought, but people tend to just not doing anything about it. Just think, well, it is what it is, and you just have to accept what is happening. What was the sort of Is that just you in terms of you thinking something needs to happen and I want to make that happen? Is that just the kind of person that you are?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, again, this might come as a surprise. I'm an accountant who doesn't love paperwork. I just hate paperwork. Right? I know that's me, right? Because it's a challenge for me. Guys, like, okay, so what do I do to sort of not do this bit, right? So I always think to myself. But likewise, I'm not alone. Even in MortgageX, there are a lot of other people, right? So they think alike, right? So I think that's when everything starts clicking because whenever I want to do a project or anything like that, they back me. Likewise, when they want to do projects, I back them, right? So as a team, it kind of works very well, right? Because all of us don't like paperwork, right? I know it'll sound weird coming from an accountant and a mortgage broker, but I think if you look at a lot of other industries, you don't get much paperwork, right? Nowadays you have an app or a QR code or whatever it is, nothing else, right? Even if you go for an event, you usually get your ticket in an app. Now you don't get paper tickets anymore. Or you get a QR code, you just scan it and you're in, right? But, that's where all the other industries have gone. But we are way far behind, right? So that's the change I think we want. We want to challenge ourselves all the time, right? But yeah, like you said, it's I'm a person like that, but I'm not alone, right? We have a team who helps, right? I've got co-directors who help me. MortgageX is another project where there's two other directors who get involved in this as well. This particular project, they are very much tech-based, right? IT background, people who help us a lot with the AI stuff. So, all of us kind of think alike. So I think that's quite helpful when it comes to this. Yeah.
Okay. So enough about, obviously we've talked about your background and your sort of thought process behind MortgageX. So do you want to just explain exactly what MortgageX is?
Yeah, sure. So for me, MortgageX, the simplest way to explain this is it's a app-based CRM. Right, I'm showing my phone. I think we are the pioneers of that because a lot of CRM systems out there, but nothing is really app-based, right? So when I say it's app-based CRM, the client-facing is always the app. Obviously, the brokers come to their CRM, but it's an app-based, right? So the initial interface is an app. Traditionally, mortgage brokers, I've worked in firms before who send out a form for the client to fill, right? So on a Word document, on an Excel, they fill that and send it. But if you're a little better than that, you will send out a link saying that, okay, this is the link. Can you please, fill up the form? It's a bit more interactive because, like I said, there are good CRM systems out there which does that, right? But this is where our challenge was, right? Everybody uses a mobile phone these days, and everybody uses a smartphone, right? And if you look at the statistics, 80% of the population today log into the internet using a phone, right? And we, as in the mortgage world, we don't do that, right? Because there are few companies who have apps out there, but it doesn't do the whole journey on an app, right? As far as I know, not in the UK at least, right? So we thought, okay, let's make that difference, right? Let's make that step. So that's what it is. So it's an app-based CRM system. But the difference is there are two big benefits for the customer as well as the mortgage broker. So from a customer's point of view, because you're using an app, you can get your application, right? So if you're filling up that link that the mortgage broker sends, I've spoken to brokers who say, look, clients take about 2 hours to fill this form, right? We think you can get it done in under 10 minutes if it's an individual, right? I mean, I've done it in 8 minutes, but that's me, right? Because I always like challenging myself, right? But there are, like if it's a joint application, it shouldn't take you longer than 15 minutes, right? And when I say fill in this application, we do all the funky stuff, right? So we go, pick information using open banking. We integrate to credit reference agencies. We integrate IDs and things like that. So all that is done, right? It's not only a matter of filling the form, but bank statements are downloaded. By the time you finish this 10 minutes, your bank statements are downloaded. Your credit file is already downloaded. Your ID verification is already done, right? So all that is done. Everything is done in that 10 minutes, right? So that's the aim, right? So the customer sees a massive benefit, right? Because they no longer have to spend 2 hours trying to do this application process, right? So that journey is slowed down. But in the back end, what happens is because we integrate this, all the information gets populated on the CRM, and that information is accurate because I'll take a few examples. If you look at I said we use credit reference agencies. So we pick information from the credit reference agency and auto-populate the fact find. So if somebody says I have a credit card balance of 15,500, I mean, they usually give you round numbers, right? But we get the most accurate number from the credit reference agency because that's what the bank checks, right? And if you ask, okay, confirm your commitment sort of thing in the fact find, that information is again picked from the credit reference agency. So all that information is accurate, right? So whatever is in your fact find is accurate, and the customer doesn't fill it, right? Because all what the customer does is give a few basic information. Using that basic information, we download the credit files, right? So they don't have to, go to Experian or whichever credit reference agency they use and download the forms and send it to us, sort of thing. All that is not needed, right? So we've sort of made use of tech so that we can just streamline the process just using the app. And while you use the app, everything is happening in the background, right? So by the time you finish it, we actually can pinpoint a product saying, actually, this is the product that will work for you, right? I mean, strategically, we won't show that because we'll say best buy sort of thing, but the broker will get a summary of the products which we think will work for the client. Because, say, for example, if you look at, somebody who's on commission and bonus, right? So if your commission is monthly, you banks treat it in a different way. If it's quarterly, it's treated in a different way. If people get commission on annual basis, again, that's treated in a different way. But we use, the technology that's out there, and we built some stuff ourselves as well to make sure that when we source a product, we also look at criteria. So criteria is already built in. So the product that comes out is actually accurate, right? It should work. Obviously, we tell brokers to double check because that's their job, right? But at the same time, we think the product is accurate. So all that can be done in that 10 minutes, right? So now if you look at, so that's the bigger benefit for the client, right? They're not spending time. But if you look at the other side, from the mortgage broker side, they're not spending much time either because you no longer have to fill up a fact find. Of course, there might be soft facts you might want to include because you're having a conversation with the client. But all the information is filled. You don't have to check because already the numbers are picked up from credit reference agencies. We use multiple credit reference agencies, so the number we think is accurate, right? So you don't have to check that again. It's all done. Usually in a fact find, you ask, how much money you spend on, say, electricity, gas, sort of thing, right? You don't have to fill those, right? Because if a client even fills it, because they're sometimes in a rush, they just put a round number and send it, right? But what the system does, it looks at the credit reference agencies. It looks at because we also use open banking, it'll look at your bank statement and pick up those numbers and populate it. So that number is accurate. So you don't have to actually check it, right? So broker's life is going to be massively easy, right? Because they have less checking to do because, you don't have to fill up forms or anything like that. All that sort of populated in the system, right? So that's why I think it's, this is the kind of tech that we are using, right? And I think a lot of brokers should use tech, right? So it will make life easier. Because if you take, 2 years ago, there are a lot of remortgages, but now a lot of them have become product transfers, right? So the broker's income is actually dropping, right, compared to what it was, because a lot of people who have to do a remortgage nowadays end up doing a product transfer. And we know that the proc fee on product transfers with most banks are like half of what you would normally get, right? So they have to work harder, right? And also, the workload hasn't reduced, especially with consumer duty and things like that. The workload has actually increased, right? So how do you manage that? So if you don't, take on tech, I think you'll spend a lot of time trying to do that, right? So, yeah.
I think, like you say, it's embracing the technology that's out there. And it's great to hear you talk about open banking and how you're embracing that in such a way, because I think that's just open banking can make brokers' lives so much easier. Like you say, and every broker that's listening to the podcast is thinking about, we all know those clients that have, like you say, clients will just, I've got £15,000 on my credit card. Actually, it's 15,600, which can make clients might think, oh, well, it's just £600, but that can make a big difference in the amount they can borrow and their application and things like that. So it's great to hear that you are embracing technology, open banking from that point of view to make everybody's lives better, really easier, because like you say, clients haven't got to think about exactly what they're paying on the gas or the electricity. Everything's pulled from their credit file or their bank statements, which is obviously that's the truth and not something that can be changed or guessed in any kind of way. But the thing is, so you've got your open banking that you are embracing as well, but then you've also got, from a broker's point of view, we all know that like these things of tech criteria hub and like things that can help with with criteria. So is that something with the criteria aspect, open banking again, and I understand all that, and credit rating agencies, we all understand how those kind of work. So that bit from a broker point of view is not something that's new. What are you like in terms of the criteria aspect of it when you are sourcing the product? Is that something that you using your own technology to update criteria, or is that something like a third party?
Yeah.
In that,
I kept it a little simple, but I'll explain how we do. We have a concept called triangulation that we use. So with triangulation, we use multiple sources to get the information. So we don't stick to one source. So we have a way that we pull details from the banks as well, as and when their criteria changes, we build that, right? So that's there. So likewise, we use third-party applications as well. So we just, because we use all three, the answer should be the same, right? So if it's not, we built logic to go and verify which one is correct, right? So that's what we do. So with using triangulation, it helps us, refine our answers, right? So that the same thing goes with, credit reference agencies. That's why I said we use multiple agencies. So if somebody's credit file has, let's say, a mispayment, right, and two reference agencies notes that and one doesn't, right? So there's a logic built in to see which one is correct, right? So because if two is saying yes and one is saying no, that means, it's very likely to be yes, right? Because two. Yeah. So that's the logic we built in. So that's why we use triangulation. So with a lot of our decisions, it's based on triangulation. So likewise, even sourcing, we use multiple sources, right? Because sometimes the answers can differ. It's very rare, but it does differ, right? Because I'm not using the examples, but there are various sourcing tools out there. So we use multiple sources, and then we make sure that the answer is correct, what we give out to the client. So that's why we are very confident that it works, right? So so that's the logic we use to get the information.
Okay, and thanks for getting a bit deeper into that. And so I do understand, and that's given a great explanation from how you sort of the triangulation point of view. There's something you sort of said in there, which I wanted to sort of explore a little bit, because if I'm a broker sat here listening to how you're embracing AI and technology and things are working, thinking, well, ultimately in the future, am I going to be cut out of this? Is there no need for a broker anymore? But actually what you said in there was there's still a bit of the due diligence from an advice point of view, from a recommendation point of view, from a broker's point of view of doing their part of this. All you're not, from what you're saying, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is that you are just trying to help the process, not to eliminate and get rid of brokers altogether. You run a mortgage broker firm, and that's not what you're saying. It's just to help brokers work smarter, work a lot better, like work in terms of and embrace technology that is there to make their lives a lot easier.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. I mean, again, I'll use an easy example here, right? ChatGPT, right? I use ChatGPT a lot, right? I write letters. I sometimes go and check whether my letters are correct, right? So I use that, right? And sometimes I'm stuck for words and I'm thinking, let's get some views, right? I mean, you don't just copy and paste what you get from ChatGPT because everybody knows you've copied and pasted them, right? You use your sense after that to see whether that actually does make sense, right? Because sometimes, they write funny stuff, right? So you have to make sure you do that. So likewise, what we are saying is this is there to make life easy for you, right? It's not to sort of replace you. So if, like I said, your revenue is dropping, because people are using product transfers nowadays, and obviously the housing market isn't what it was 2 years ago, right? Because people are still not buying. So if your revenue is dropping and obviously costs have gone up, we know that cost of living has gone up, right? So everything is gone up in price. So you're hit by revenue coming down and you're hit by cost going up, right? So what that means is the income you're making is actually starting to drop unless you're getting so many new clients, right? Which is not the case for everybody, right? So then you got to find ways of sort of reducing that cost, right? And increasing your revenue. So if you are using tech to help you with that, maybe you can go and talk to more clients, right? Because I've got a client who signed up for the app. He's telling me that he hasn't sold insurance in the last 2 years, right? And I'm thinking, why, right? Because he said, I don't have the time to do it, right? And I'm thinking, no, you should have the time to do it, and you're supposed to do it, right? But that's the issue you have, right? Because they're struggling. They're still servicing their old client with product transfers, but they're still not selling their insurance, right? But he's saying, what do I do? I've got to service them. So I mean, he's seeing the benefits of it, right? So hopefully other people will as well. So it's definitely not here to sort of replace brokers. And of course, FCA, I think FCA comes up with guidance. These kind of transactions always have to have a mortgage broker at the end, right? So that's why we say whatever results we get, we are fairly certain that the answers are correct. But we always tell brokers to check it, right? Because that's their job. But it's only here to sort of cut down that admin, right? Because we think, I speak to brokers, they tell me I always ask this at the end of the call, how much time do you spend on admin? They say about 50% of the time. That's pretty bad, right? If you're spending 50% doing admin. I think if you use the app, right, this is our calculation, right? Percentages might vary slightly, but I think brokers should be not spending more than 20% of their time if they are using tech, right? Obviously, I like to relate it to my app, but at the same time, if you are using the tech properly, you shouldn't be spending more than that, right? Because even another feature we have is the suitability reports, right? Suitability reports, the system does it, right? I know there are some CRMs who populate certain things, right? But here, based on the notes that you've written, it pulls up that detail. It does like what the ChatGPT does, right? We have our own GPT. It writes a letter for you, right? Obviously, the letter will come out. We think it's good enough to send, but it's the broker's job is to verify that it makes sense, right? Because this is AI at the end of the day, right? So that we are using. It's to make life easy for you. But if you have to still make a few corrections, you can. But we think the letter is good enough to go.
I think, like say, you are using it for a lot of brokers. It's just having that template there. So, like with everything, like a lot of people use chat. Most people use ChatGPT now, just to give that foundation for somewhere to start. So, whatever you're doing, like you say, sense checking your letters, whatever you're using it for, it just gives you that basis to then tweak your own personality into that document or whatever you're using ChatGPT for. I think the big point for me is what you sort of said there was about protection. It's about the other side aspects of the income that brokers can forget about when they're busy, and retention of those clients as well, which I'll explain. But I think, like I said, there's a lot of brokers I see where they are just busy just doing mortgages. They may be broker free, so they're not charging them broker fee, and they're just very transactional in terms of mortgage, and they are not offering that. They're not talking to the clients about protection and the reasons why how they can lose their home and all those aspects of it. They're not spotting other opportunities like referrals to financial advisors for pension advice or investment advice. All these are the things that brokers have like wills and estate planning, all these other things that brokers can talk about with their clients, but don't, because they don't have the time. This is great for me because I'm like thinking that this is where you're using technology to give you more time to work smarter, to use that time wisely, not to just waste it, but to use the time wisely to develop your protection knowledge if that's a gap, or develop your sales skills in terms of protection, and all those things, and then making sure you've got part of the process to talk to your client about protection from the start all the way through the process, and then at the end still making sure, because a broker that's just transactional, that's just doing the mortgage because they don't have time to do anything else, like that's not something I believe in. Now that's not something, like if they hand off to a protection advisor, that's okay, but I'm very much around, if you're doing the mortgage, if you're getting somebody into 100,000, 200,000, £500,000 into debt, you should make sure that it's the client's choice to leave, not anybody else's, because they're your client. You should be looking after the client. It's about your advice and recommendation. So you have to talk about protection, because when the worst happens, and it happens to people every single day, as a broker, once you experience that for your client, and your client rings you up and says, this partner's not here anymore, and the main breadwinner's not here, and then we're now, what do we do? You've got to tell that client, so say, well, you could have had income protection, or you could have had life cover, I think, but I didn't talk to you about that, or I didn't refer to you to you as my client, to somebody that I work with to do that. When you get those calls and you get those experiences, you want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you again, A, to your client, but B, to you as a mortgage broker. So this sort of thing is, and this is why it's great to get you onto the podcast, because, and I'm sort of getting like motivated and passionate about it, because it's not here to take out, it's just to streamline the process, to have the ability to brokers, not to cut them out, but for them, give them the ability to develop themselves, personal development from a product knowledge point of view, whether it's protection, whether it's wills, estate planning, just to see the clients, to work with them and see the opportunities that's there as part of consumer duty as well, that's surrounding all this, to sort of say, look, you have got to show you've not got a will in place. This is what's going to happen. Your protection, this is what we need to talk about. This is what can happen. And it's just making sure that you've got the time and effort with your client to go through a proper job and not just cut corners and take shortcuts. This is for me, the benefit for what you're talking about and what you're developing. And I'm sure it will, when we'll talk about the future in a bit, like I'm sure it's going to continue developing, but this is a massive plus from a broker point of view.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm sure they will benefit, because we have a few early adopters and they're liking it. And even our clients are liking it, because they're like, okay, because quite often what our brokers do is, this is a tip I'm giving away, because when they have the initial chat, they just get the client to use the app while they have the chat, right? So they know in 10 minutes at the end of the conversation, you already have the bank statement and the product is also ready for them, right? They just need to do the checking, right? So it is, we've seen the fruits of it, right? For sure. But, there are a few early adopters, because we are still a new product out there, because we've been around for about 2 months now, right? So it's not very long since we've launched. Yeah. So there are a few early adopters, and they seem to be liking it as well, which is good. Yeah.
And I think, like I say, it benefits not only the client, it benefits, like I say, not only the brokers, but it's benefiting the clients in a big way as well. Because, like you say, when you get in, if you're going through a mortgage, like we take things for granted in the mortgage industry as mortgage brokers, we take clients' knowledge for granted that, but these are sort of things that the processing of a mortgage or buying a house for a client could be every 5 years, is every 2 years. It's not something they're doing every single day like we are. I think we sort of really underestimate that in terms of what, and so clients sort of want a better process. They want a streamlined process. They want to have the ease and less sort of distractions and within what they need to be doing day to day, because we've all got busy lives. So the mortgage part of it, if they can go onto the app, submit their information, go through the process, use open banking, everything's pulled together. There's benefits to brokers, but massively from a client point of view, because it makes life a lot easier for them.
Yeah, definitely it will. Because at the end of the day, you need to keep the client happy, isn't it? Because if somebody goes through a journey quite quick, they're like, oh, wow, why spending 2 hours, right? I only spend 10 minutes on that, right? So they go and talk to other people. So when they talk to other people, invariably you're going to, look better compared to the competitor out there who gives you a form to fill. So it makes a big difference. So I think we will see results of it, in the months to come. Because currently, like I said, the feedback has been really good. So people who have kind of taken it. But obviously, you have to have that open mind saying that, look, tech is out there. I want to use this tech, right? So you have to go have an open mind. Otherwise, it's difficult, right? Because a lot of the brokers, like I said, there are few brokers, because I've been on various stages as well, right? So there are some brokers think, oh, this is actually going to take away my job, right? So, but if you start with negative, you're not going to do anything, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that you've got to be, talked about it too many times, about being as a broker, you've got to be adaptable. You've got to embrace technology, embrace change. But then sort of with being adaptable, you are then, and I think we are, within the mortgage industry, we are becoming more adaptable. We have lost the stigmata from years and years ago, and the financial advisors and the mortgage advisors and the whole process and the whole system and the whole industry. We are losing that from I want to be politically correct. The old guard, the old school, whatever you want to call it, they are retiring, they're selling their client banks, they're moving on. You've got so much like new people coming into industry. I'd like work with some amazing people that are just starting out in the industry, that are really looking to build their business, build a brand, grow, and become a long-term future in this industry. So things like this is, like, say, you're not looking to replace them, it's just looking to streamline the process. And I think the right brokers will welcome this with open arms. I think this is how it can work for me. Like, and they say, if you start with the negative of, well, you're just looking at how to replace me, and you can hear those. I can hear those people now who listen to podcasts, but well, they just need to looking to get rid of the brokers app. It's the end of the world as we know it, and the rest of it. That's not, and that might happen in the future. We never know what's going to happen in long way into the future. However, as what you're trying to produce, what you are producing here, and you're trying to change, you're not replacing the brokers, just enhancing their time and their business just for them to work a lot smarter. So, and in terms of, I knew we'd sort of like time wise, I knew we just wouldn't struggle to talk and fulfill the time of the podcast. But I wanted to, like you say, you're only a few months in. If they go, what's that like? What's the future like? Are you busy with what's happening now, or you think about the future of the product, or where's your head at for you right now and the business?
We have a roadmap. So this is what you're seeing is only the surface currently, right? Because there's so much that we are adding on. We've also gone live with something called Amy. Amy is a voice assistant, right? We give this as an optional thing to the mortgage brokers. If they want, they can have this as well. So on the app, you have something like Alexa built in, right? So you can ask questions. So if you're, say, for example, I'm the mortgage broker, and let's say I'm doing this podcast, right? And somebody wants to ask a question, I'm not there. They can go and ask questions. So Amy will try to answer some of the basic questions like, what's a fixed rate mortgage? What's a variable? It can also, this is the difference between Amy and something like Alexa, right? It can have a dialogue flow, meaning it can ask questions. So for example, if somebody is trying to consolidate debt, right, they can ask a question, okay, I want to debt consolidate. Then it'll ask question like, how much do you want to sort of consolidate, right? And it'll do the calculations on the fly. So it's very intelligent that way. It can have a human-like conversation. So that we built that as well. So that's there. It's live and it's optional for sort of brokers if they want to use that as well. We don't charge for that. That comes free with the app anyway. Then we've got something called preemptive underwriting, which is just gone live. So with preemptive underwriting, we can tell how much a client can actually afford, right? Because we have access to open banking and we have access to the credit files. we can underwrite a case. Actually, we actually can underwrite a case. So when I say underwrite a case, it'll tell you how much the client can afford. It can even go back, if needed, up to 2 years to look at the client, right, their history. So if somebody's income has suddenly gone up to 50,000 from being, I don't know, 25,000 or whatever it is, we can see that history. So we will do this. The system can do a lot of things that the underwriter will do in the background. So that's why we call it preemptive underwriting. So we have built up some of those clever features as well, which have just gone live. But likewise, we are adding a lot of other things as we go, because we have a roadmap and we want to stick to that. And obviously, we've got the finances to help us as well. So therefore, we know we can go through that journey. So what you see today is probably not what you'll see in 3 months' time or 6 months' time or years. Because again, like I said, you need to keep embracing technology, right? Otherwise, your app that you build or app-based CRM you build will be obsolete in no time, right? Because other people will catch up, right? Because they'll come up with something smarter. But we have to keep doing it as well, right? So we have a lot of things in our roadmap. But, watch this space, because they are coming, right? So coming one by one, and we're working on some of the projects parallelly, right? So hopefully they'll start coming in soon as well, yeah.
Excellent. I think, like I say, you're right. You've got to embrace technology, but then also you've got to. It's not going to be this is the end of the road. Well, you've created something and then that's now working, and you just leave it. You've got to be constantly developing and moving forward because, like I said, there'll always be a competitor that's bringing something out, or be you wanting to be. From what you're saying and the way you've come across, you want to be the forefront of this, and then sort of move brokers thinking in terms of embracing technology, and you want to be the business that is there helping brokers to embrace that technology by making their lives easier. So, I think you've given yourself a ticket back onto podcast in 6 months' time to update where we're at and how you're getting on and
definitely.
things like that. So,
thank you for that. Yeah.
No problem at all.
Yeah, like I said.
So I'm sat as a broker right now. I've listened to you on the podcast. Obviously, we've just skimmed the surface in terms of what you're doing and the whole product and the pros and things like that. I'm sat here thinking, I want to understand more about MortgageX and what it does and the app and how it works and how do people reach out to you? How do people sort of start looking into what you're offering?
Yeah. So, people can connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to connect people through LinkedIn and talk to them. We are also present in a lot of social media. We go as MortgageX, right? So if you type on social media, you will find us because we are in different platforms as well as, websites as well. So, do get in touch in any of those means, right? Because we, like I said, we are quite forward looking, right? So therefore, we are open with all these sort of new sort of means of communication. So if you want to contact us using those means, please feel free to do so. We can arrange a demo and show exactly how it works, right? And if people want to play around, we have, prototypes as well, which we can show them, right? So, we can do that as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So I think we'll make sure that in the show notes, we've got all your links in there for your LinkedIn, get the demo both through to your website and everything else. So we'll make it as easy as possible for people to reach out and get the demos booked in. Definitely. Iftikhar, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for trusting me with no agenda and just being very conversational. I really appreciate that. And it's been great to talk to you. It's been great to hear a lot more about you and the personality side of it, rather than just sort of seeing the tech side of it. And it's good to hear how you you really are wanting to develop the broker role to make it easier for them to then work smarter, and then obviously embracing technology and adapting to change as we see. But thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on to the podcast. And like I said, no doubt we'll get you back on in 6 months' time to update on where we're at.
Thank you very much, Craig. Thanks for having me. And, it's lovely being here on the show for sure. Thank you very much, Craig.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Iftikhar, for coming on the podcast. I think fair to say I really appreciate you being a guest, giving a true, honest account of yourself, sharing exactly what MortgageX is. And as I've said in the podcast, all the links to MortgageX and booking demos and links to Ithaca and his social media profiles are all within the show notes. So reach out, book your own demo, have a look at what MortgageX is offering and how it can help enhance your current process. Any thoughts or comments or feedback, leave them in the whichever platform you listen to or watch the podcast on. So thanks very much for that. I've also, if you've not seen already, I've got a new podcast out, daily podcast every Monday to Friday, which is called The Morning Mindset. Also links in the show notes as well to that, looking at just daily inspiration, daily practical advice in terms of the morning mindset and running a business and being self-employed. So have a listen to that. Any thoughts, feedback on that, then please, again, leave them on whatever platform you listen to or watch the podcast. Thank you very much. If you are thinking about becoming a self-employed mortgage broker or looking to set up your own mortgage broker firm, brand and business, or you're looking to accelerate the growth of your existing one, please see my website, craigskelton.co.uk, and that will explain how I can help you develop and grow your business. And as always, don't forget to run your own race.